These islands are cold, volcanic, and mostly empty. They stretch like a broken chain between Japan and Russia. They are called the Kurils. But they are not just rocks in the sea. They are the last wounds of World War II. Because even today, Japan and Russia have never signed a peace treaty. Okay? And it's because of these islands. But the story doesn't begin in 1945. It begins with imperial ambition, treaties signed in ink, and land swapped like cards. In the 1800s, both Japan and Imperial Russia were expanding. They clashed in the north, over islands neither had fully explored. In 1855, they signed a treaty. Japan would take the southern Kurils, Russia would take the northern ones. Simple for a while. Then came war. In 1904, Japan fought Russia over control of Korea and Manchuria. Japan won. It shocked the world. An Asian empire defeating a European one, and the borders shifted again. But nothing would change the map more than World War II. In 1945, as Japan surrendered, the Soviet Union invaded the Kuril Islands. In just weeks, Soviet troops took the entire chain, all the way to Hokkaido's doorstep. Japan surrendered, but the wound remained. To this day, Russia controls all of the Kurils, but Japan still claims the four southernmost islands: Iturup Kunashore, Shakotan, and the Habomai Islets. They call them the Northern Territories, and say they were never part of what Japan surrendered after the war, but Russia refuses to return them. To Moscow, the Kurils were taken as spoils of victory, just like Berlin or Kaliningrad, and they are strategically vital. They protect Russia's Pacific Fleet. They sit near U.S. allies like Japan and South Korea, and they are being militarized, with bases, missiles, and radar. In the 1950s, the U.S. supported Japan's claim. Cold War politics made a solution impossible. In 1956, Russia offered to return to islands, but Japan refused without all four. Since then, every negotiation has failed. Leaders shake hands. Declarations are signed, but the treaty still missing. Now, in the 2020s, the Kurils are more militarized than ever. Japan still builds infrastructure for a population that can't return. Russia still flies bombers overhead, and no peace treaty has ever been signed. Because when maps are redrawn by war and justice is defined by victory, even a chain of frozen islands can hold two nations hostage for 80 years. They say there are two kinds of islands. Some measure wealth in coconuts and cruisers, and others count their value in chains. The Kurils belong to the latter. They are worth more as tools of geopolitics than tropical getaways. Most are uninhabited, cut off from any road, rail, or airport. What development they do have was built by Russians or Japanese, a testament to how divided they still are. I traveled to the disputed line. From the best vantage point, I could see why these islands are so contested. On clear days, you can see Japan. Its mountains loom through the haze. On less clear days, you can see Russia. Its planes fly above your head. I learned about their history in a small museum on Hokkaido. The exhibits start with the 19th century. Japanese whalers mapped the Kurils. Russian soldiers claimed them for the Tsar. Soon, they were swapping them like baseball cards. In 1905, the Treaty of Portsmouth gave all of the Kurils to Japan. The islands were divided into two prefectures. Roads were built, schools opened, homes were constructed. Life was normal. Until it wasn't. In 1941, Japan invaded the Soviet Union. 3 years later, they were fighting for their lives. As American forces approached, Japan's attention shifted south. So in April 1946, the islands were evacuated. A month later, the Soviets arrived. They marched across the empty roads. The residents fled inland. More fighting broke out. This time, the Kurils were evacuated twice. By 1946, the Soviets controlled all of the islands. Japan never accepted this. A few years later, they tried to get them back. We are living through the consequences of that war. Today, Russia and Japan don't get along. Their relationship is strained. Their economies are separate. Their banks don't communicate. Their companies don't trade. Their citizens don't visit. The best proof of this is the lighthouse on Kunashir Island. Built by the Japanese in 1937, it guides ships to the shores of Iturup. If it was any other country, Japan would probably send diplomats to discuss this anomaly. But since it's Russia, they keep quiet. It's hard to overstate how strange this situation is. A group of mostly empty islands prevent two major powers from ending a war. Take Kunashir, the largest of the disputed islands, covers around half of Japan's claim. How did this happen? Well, after the war, most of the islanders left. Many wanted to go to Japan. Others were forcibly relocated by the Soviets. Between 1946 and 1949, 17,000 people left the Kurils. By 1956, only 2,000 remained. This population crisis had three effects. First, the Soviets developed the islands. They built schools, roads, hotels, hospitals, and businesses. Second, they changed the demographics. Russians moved in and married the remaining Kurils. Today, most of the islanders identify as Russian. And third, negotiations failed. By the 1950s, Japan and Russia were refusing to compromise. Japan wanted all four islands. Russia wanted to keep all four. So the talks ended. Why? Because neither side wanted to make concessions. Neither side was willing to accept defeat. The islands became a political football. Today, we see the results. The island of Kunashir has a Russian governor, mayor, police force, post offices, and state buildings. They even have their own flag, yet most of it is within Japan's exclusive economic zone. Meanwhile, the island of Shikotan is completely Russian, except for its location. It sits within Japan's territorial waters. So why does it matter? Why does any of this matter? Well, the Kurils are useful. First, they are strategically important. The islands guard Russia's Pacific Fleet. They also monitor U.S. allies like Japan and South Korea. Second, they are militarized. Russia's Pacific Fleet is stationed on the Kurils. They conduct missile tests there. They fly nuclear-powered bombers over them. And they've placed missile defense systems on the islands. Finally, they are potentially rich. The Kurils may contain oil, gas, minerals, and fish. And if that's not enough, the islands are scenic. Volcanoes tower over hot springs. Glaciers form deep blue lakes. The problem is, most of this is unused. The Kurils aren't worth much if you don't have anyone to extract them. So why haven't they been developed? Well, the Kurils are too far from everything else. There are no international airports. No roads connect the islands. Cargo ships are infrequent. Most supplies arrive by plane, which is expensive. Still, the Kurils are attractive to Japan. After all, they're only a ferry ride away from Hokkaido. For Tokyo, controlling the islands would bolster Japan's fishing industry, protect shipping lanes, secure access to resources and energy. Yet they can't have them. I ask you, why is that? What keeps these islands from being returned? The answer surprised me. It's not politics, economics, culture, religion, or geography. It's something else entirely. It's pride. Both countries refuse to admit that they might be wrong. Japan won't accept that it lost territory in 1945. Russia won't admit that it took land that didn't belong to it. After the war, Japan demanded the Kurils back. Russia refused. Since then, solutions have been proposed. In the 1950s, Russia offered to return to islands. Japan refused unless all four were given back. Talks continued throughout the Cold War and afterwards, but each attempt ended with no deal. Today, Russia's position is absolute. They will not negotiate over the Kurils, and Japan's position is equally firm. So this conflict continues. It's kept secret by layers of bureaucracy, watered down by decades of negotiations, and ignored by a media focused on Ukraine. but the Kurils are still disputed. When I visited Aturup Island, I saw evidence of this firsthand. A visitor center taught me about the history of the island. A statue honored the original inhabitants, and informational panels promoted tourism. Except no tourists can visit. It's a Russian island that belongs to Japan. It's a place without any official name, without any clear future, and without any guarantee of peace. I trekked through snow, wind, and ice. I slept in deserted buildings and ate canned food. I learned about two cultures that can't coexist, about two languages that can't communicate, and about two histories that can't agree. All over the Kurils, there are signs of a divided past. Old graveyards, abandoned houses, and crumbling infrastructure. At this rate, they'll be here for another 80 years. The longest war in history isn't measured in land or casualties, but in bureaucracy. It's the slow burn of unsolved conflicts. It's the waste of untapped potential. It's the cost of missed opportunities. And it's easy to dismiss. After all, there are bigger wars raging. People face threats far worse than bureaucratic battles. But that's exactly the point. In a world full of urgent problems, we can lose sight of the subtle ones. The story of the Kurils is an example of the latter. It's a cautionary tale of pride, politics, and frozen islands. It shows us that some wounds never heal, that some scars never fade, and that some maps are never finished. Thank you for watching The Disputed Line.